Good afternoon, everyone. We've got right at 4 o'clock on our end, so thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. This is Marianne at ODP, and I'm here with Stephanie in the office. Whenever we ask for training topics of interest from folks, the idea of getting our legislators' attention always seems to make the list. So with the 2017 session now officially underway, it just felt like a perfect time to talk about this. And we are incredibly lucky to be joined today by Van, who will share her experience and her expertise with us in this area. You'll be able to tell pretty quickly that this isn't just a topic of interest for her, but a real passion that started way back when she was in junior high. Maybe not way back, Van, sorry about that. So with that, I will turn it over to Van, let her do a little bit of introduction and get started. But one quick reminder, please just remember to put your phones on mute so we can minimize the background noise. That would be great. And if you have questions, the chat box is open. We'll probably save questions to the very end, but feel free to type in any comments or questions you have along the way, and we will monitor as I get going. So without further ado, Van, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, sounds great. So, put together this PowerPoint for you guys. I thought I'd give you a quick introduction of who I am. For the last 12 years, I've been the clinical supervisor of the developmental disability here. Our office is in Boise. We also have one out in Nampa. So we work with children with developmental disabilities like autism and different cognitive impairments. So that's pretty much what I do by day. I got involved with advocacy and lobbying actually when I was a kid. I grew up in New Orleans, and when my mom moved us to Idaho when I was in high school. And when we moved to North Idaho up in Coeur d'Alene, she actually started working for a state senator, which meant my sister and I were twins. Ended up spending a lot of our free time doing phone banking and literature drops and volunteering on different political campaigns. And when you do that for fun when you're in high school, you learn very quickly about the different processes and that sort of thing. And by the time I was 18, I was a precinct committeeman up in my county, and I sat on the county central committee for our political party, that sort of thing. And went through college, and for the last 20 years now have not left. My interests are still here, and I'm super involved in everything I can do. So that's my history on advocacy and lobbying, a little brief introduction. We'll go up to the next page. So I'm going to go over a few things with you today. We're going to go over the basics, finding out who your legislator is, what committees they sit on, how you contact them. Also, I included in here just for reference because I wanted to make sure that everyone could access this information if they didn't know how the state's budget was developed. I also added, once I sent out the PDF, I added how a bill became a law into here. I'm not going to go over that very extensively, but I wanted you guys to know how to get to that information if you wanted to. We're going to go over the difference between advocacy and lobbying and the 5 tips for getting your legislature's attention. And if you look up here, the legislature.idaho.gov, this is the main tool we're going to be using for this presentation. Basically, anything you're looking to do in advocacy, you'll be able to find a lot of information here. So I wanted you guys to know how to navigate it a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and start. So what is my legislative district? If you don't know that off the top of your head, there's several ways to find that out. You can go on the state's website, which I have right here, legislator.idaho.gov/legislators. You can also go to idahovotes.gov, and I'm actually going to click on this one first because there's a lot of really good information on here for you. So if you want to find where you vote, you click over here on where do I vote. again, where do I vote? You're going to pick your county that you live in. This will also tell you where your precinct to vote is in. I live in Canyon County, so find that. I'm going to show you my address, so don't send me any hate mail or anything. I'm kidding. Find my street. Okay, so I'm in Legislative District 10, right here, which you can see. I'm in the 1st Congressional District. My precinct is 13, and this is the church in which I would go vote at, right here. That's one really important way to find out, where you vote and who your legislators are. So that'll tell you your legislative districts. And then another great way that can tell you who your legislators are to go to legislator.idaho.gov/legislators and click on who's my legislator. We'll do that. Again, you're going to put in your address. Okay, and if you look right here, District 10, these are my legislators. So not only does it show you this, it points to you on the map where you're located, and you can click on any one of your legislators. Here's my Senator, Jim Rice, and right here, if you look, it tells you his email address. This is his actual home address and the different committees that he sits on. And you can give them a call at home. It feels weird to have their home address or home phone number, but literally if you call them, you will get them at home. If you want to contact them at the State House, right here, this is where you would look down here at the bottom. Okay. Go back to the PowerPoint. Oh, the committees, we saw that. So let's go back to, this, the legislators. You can also, I just wanted you guys to be familiar with this, you can also search to see who sits on a committee. For me, we do a lot with, in my profession, we speak a lot with the Health and Welfare Committee. So you just click on committees, and you can look. Agricultural Affairs, Commerce, Human Resources, Education. Even breaks it up by political party. Who are the Republicans? Who are the Democrats? Gives you information on contacting them over here on the left. Phone numbers. So these are the ones. One Democrat here on Health and Welfare. That's a lot of good information for you guys to have. Next thing I wanted you guys to see the budgeting process and kind of how that is formed. There's a lot of information on here. There's an introduction you can look at on the budgeting process. There's statutory framework if you actually want to look at statute. There's a history going back to the 1890s of the budget, but really I think one of the most important pieces of information on this website is right here, the budget flow chart. So when you're writing a budget for the year, you can see that this process, we just started legislative session January, like 2 weeks ago, but the process for the budget actually started last July, where the manuals were distributed to the different agencies. The state agencies between June and August are working on their budget requests. They send in their budgets. They're due September 1st. They go to both the legislature and the governor. And over the course of September through December, there is the analysis and development of the legislative budget book. Once legislative session happens in January, there's a budget hearing with the JFAC committee, which is Joint Finance Appropriation Committee. They do the budget setting process. Bills get introduced on the floor in committees. They have to go to the House, pass the Senate, pass both, go to the governor. If the governor decides to make it a law, gets signed into law. If he wants to make any changes or veto it, you'll notice that it has to start the whole process over again. So there's like a circle right here. Same thing happens here. Once it gets to the floor, it can be amended at any point in time in the House. And it goes from committee to House, the full House, to the Senate. If anything changes, then it can end up in this circle right here, this circle right here, or this circle right here. So they're very busy down there at the legislature. And then, of course, the bill, it gets signed, bill becomes law. Usually kicks in on the 1st of July of that year. Next, this wasn't on the, I added this slide after I sent out the resource to you guys. They hand out how a bill becomes law, and I'm not going to go very far into this at all. I just gave you kind of a quick rundown of how a bill becomes law, but I did want you guys to know that this is actually here on the website for you guys to check out, and you get to it by either the link you just saw, resources, but really it's right here under resources, how a bill becomes law. And it's kind of extensive. I mean, it's amazing that we pass so many laws every year. Feel like how easily they can be killed or changed and that sort of thing. The next thing we're going to talk about, and this is the big topic. What is the difference between advocacy and lobbying? In general, advocacy is educating about a specific topic and can be geared towards anyone. We see a lot of public campaigns that are advocacy. And lobbying is specific to asking a policymaker to vote a specific way on a specific piece of legislation or proposal. So it's that ask right here is the big word. To make a decision or vote is really what defines what lobbying is. Some people don't realize they're lobbying when they're doing it. Lobbying can be a scary term. You don't have to be registered down at the State House to lobby someone. And the quick answer is a different end process. So the goal of advocacy and lobbying is the same. You want to garner support for or against something. Lobbying is when you ask the policymaker to vote on it on a specific way. So I'm going to give you some examples of advocacy, how to educate lawmakers. So one way, telling your lawmaker about how funding has benefited your constituents. So for me, as a clinical supervisor of a developmental disabilities agency, talking to the legislatures about how beneficial the services we provide are to the participants in our program. It's changing lives. It's keeping them out in the community. They're contributing to their family, that sort of thing. Inviting your lawmakers to visit your work site, that's something we've done before. I've invited legislators to come down, kind of see what we do, meet with participants, talk to them about their service they're receiving, that sort of thing, and introducing your lawmakers to the effects of policy on the people you serve. So that necessarily isn't always a positive thing. Like, we had these cuts to our program, and now these participants need more restrictive support, that sort of thing. So educating your lawmakers, that's advocacy. I put an example on here, and some of you may have been involved in this, and it was Mia who responded. But a few years ago, we had some changes in the Medicaid program for people with disabilities. And the association I was involved with, along with Community Partnerships of Idaho and a couple other agencies, did the statewide campaign called Medicaid Matters. And it went on for a few years. What we were doing, we were doing rallies all over the state where we would invite people that receive developmental services and their families to come out and just be out in the community, out and proud about the services they receive and how they're helping people. I actually went up to Coeur d'Alene for this one. I was actually at this rally, and it was huge. And we were advocating for Medicaid services and how they affect the people that they serve. You can read this if you want to. There's some pictures on here. All we're talking about is how they've really enriched the lives of the people they serve. What we also did with a few other community partners, we put together a pamphlet. Let's see. I've opened it before, should be fine. So Medicaid Matters in Idaho, real stories, real impacts, real communities. And we spoke to people in the community and their families, and we got real stories about how Medicaid programming is benefiting the people in Idaho. Difference Medicaid makes to Idaho, has some numbers. Really, what makes a difference usually is emotional impact on the legislators. So we interviewed these people, we put their pictures in, we put their stories, we did this with providers. This was done not only by providers, this is also done by advocacy groups. This is a huge, huge collaboration with people with disabilities, people that are accessing Medicaid services, providers, and different groups across the state made this happen. You can look through the pamphlet yourself if you want to read some of them. And here is another one. We geared it towards different people that we're trying to talk to. This is one, Medicaid Matters to Idaho County. So this was geared towards counties and how they stimulate economic activity within the state. So we were saying, look, these Medicaid services, not only are we providing these great services, we're creating jobs, that whole thing. So this really was a huge, huge campaign that I think was fairly successful a few years ago. So lobbying, how to lobby lawmakers. It is pretty simple if you frame it this way. It's asking people to take action on legislation. And the most recent example that I was following was in the last legislative session that you guys might be familiar with the Close the Gap Idaho. They were, hold on, let me open that. Not going to let me open that. So Close the Gap Idaho was a campaign to bring to out in the open once the ACA came through, the Affordable Care Act came through, that there were people within the state that fell through the cracks, and I believe the number was something like 78,000 people didn't qualify for the ACA, weren't getting any sort of coverage through their employers, and weren't eligible and then but also weren't eligible for any like Medicaid or anything like that. So there was this huge gap. And the way the lobbying, I mean, this turned into a lobbying because a bill was actually introduced last year, I believe by Dan Schmidt up, who I think was Latah County, I believe, District 5, actually introduced the bill. It's going to Bill 1204 right here to close the Medicaid gap in Idaho. It was shot down. But when you're lobbying, there's a bill associated with it. So when you say, hey, there's this, you're advocating for the people in the gap by acknowledging that a gap exists. There are people without coverage, letting people know, like, there are people that need coverage, that sort of thing. The minute it turns into lobbying is when you ask someone to vote specific on a bill. We're going to need, please support SB 1204. You say that to a policymaker, you just lobby them. And if you're in a nonprofit, this is really important information to know because there are laws. You can lose your nonprofit status. You'd have to look specifically at them because I don't know them off the top of my head, but this is one of the major questions I get asked all the time when we're talking about advocacy and lobbying. When does that line cross over? It's when you make an ask like this, specific to legislation or proposal. So there's several ways to contact your legislature. You can meet with them during legislative session. You can testify in front of a committee. You can make a phone call, or you can email them. Testifying in front of the committees. I've been doing this. The first time I testified, I was in college. It was extremely terrifying. I still testify when I need to this day, and even 20 years later, it's still extremely scary. But there are resources to help you get over it, and we'll go over a lot of that to kind of ease your mind on that sort of thing. But on the legislative website, it gives you kind of ground rules on testifying in front of a legislative committee. So finding out where your bill is going to be heard, be on time, check the agenda. You're going to want to dress as professionally as possible. Be sure to sign your name, wait your turn, address the chairman by chairwoman, chairman. Remember that they're in charge of that committee, so you have to address them for all discussion. You're going to want to thank them for hearing you. You're going to want to keep your testimony to 3 minutes. You want to make a clear statement on why you're there. I support this. I don't support this. And remember that they're human and they're elected by you to represent you. So that can kind of help when you're going up in front of a panel of your peers. And yes, again, remember they're here to represent you. When you're during legislative session, it can be, I misspelled committee. Sorry about that. Oh no, that's there. Never mind. That's committee. Remember, when they're in legislative session, they are going back and forth between several meetings. Sometimes you may see a legislature get up and leave and then come back. I was actually sitting in a testimony once. I saw a legislator leave, come back with 4 milkshakes. That's not typical, but I thought it was really funny and noteworthy. But it just shows how they're human. But it can be a lot more difficult to get a hold of your legislator during legislative session because they're running around. A lot of times they're going back to, on the weekends, back to their families and that sort of thing. So when you're talking to them, make sure that you get straight to the point and you're clear and you're concise and that sort of thing, so that you're not wasting their time. So the best way, I think, actually, is to contact your legislature is not during legislative session. Building relationships outside of legislative session in their hometown, in their stomping grounds, in your stomping grounds, I think is the best way to contact the legislature. Also, if you meet with them outside of legislative session, you can follow up with them when they're here. They will appreciate seeing a friendly face, and then you start to build that relationship, and there's some continuity there. So a few tips on meeting with your legislatures. One of the benefits is you get to see them more than a few seconds or minutes when you're meeting at home. You can meet them for coffee at the local coffee shop that you both hang out with. You can talk a little bit more about your family, that sort of thing, or whatever issues you're trying to address. I suggest getting to know your legislature beforehand. Look at their voting history on meaningful issues to you, and find a shared value. For example, in District 10, Greg Cheney is one of my House of Reps, and he volunteers and does fundraising for the YMCA, Treasure Valley Y, every year on their big annual campaign, as do I. So that's something we always talk about. Whenever I run into him, like, hey, how's it going with the Y, and that sort of thing. So you've been there, like, yeah, the building is looking great. They've really done some improvements. Okay, I'm really connecting with them. If you have a mutual friend, maybe you want to be like, oh, this is crazy. My partner went to high school with one of the legislators, Bass. Not Phil Bass, he was governor, but her name is, she's not in there anymore. So we had gone down to the state house, and I could drop her name, and we ended up talking about that, like, with high school with my wife. Oh my gosh, like, this is crazy information, and then we really connected, and we were able to find a shared value, so that when we started actually talking about the issue that I was advocating for, there was that real human connection, and we were able to talk about it in a really genuine way. Connect on their level. I can tell you now that I just moved out to Canyon County once I got married. I was living in the north end of Boise. I have seen more legislatures out at the Canyon County Fair for District 9, 10, and 11. I think a little bit of 12 is in Canyon County. Than I have anywhere else. Like, they're out there, they're helping the 4-H kids, they're buying the 4-H kids meat and that sort of thing. I was volunteering in the ag booth at the Canyon County Fair and ran into Larry Craig and ended up talking to him for a good 30 minutes as we were volunteering next to each other. So, finding out things that they're involved in or things that they care about, different ways to do that, looking at their voting history, social media. Social media is a great tool. If you're going to be wanting to connect with an elected official, I suggest adding them on Facebook. If nothing else, follow their page, their campaign page. And that will give you some information about what they like to do, who do they like to hang out with, that sort of thing. And keep in mind that, we're all human, so we're not all perfect. We all want what's best for the people of Idaho. We just have different ideas of how to go about it. So keeping that in mind when you're talking, and like I said, find out as much as you can about the legislator, their voting history, and really connect with that shared value. Like, we both care about families in Idaho. We want to see people succeed, and then move forward with your message from there. So the big 5 tips here, and there's a picture that goes along with this. When you're speaking with the legislatures, let me pull this up really quick. You're going to want to introduce yourself. You're going to tell them your name, what's your issue, why you care, why the lawmakers should care, and then they ask. This is the point in which you're crossing over into definitely lobbying territory if you're asking for them to vote a specific way or make a decision on something. So, go to the next page. So when I'm doing advocacy workshops, and I've traveled the state before doing this, this is something that I will actually hand out blank pieces of paper to people and have them trace their hand, and we'll actually sit down and we'll do this together so that you kind of have the muscle memory of what this is going to look like. So if you look on the thumb, when we're writing, when we're working on, what we're going to say, we have introduce yourself. Name, where you live, I'm a constituent. Number 2, on your pointer finger, your second finger, I'm here to talk to you about what? What is my issue? Okay, number 3, your middle finger, this is important to me because. Then we have 4, this is an important issue in our state because. So this is where you would explain why the legislature should care. And then the 5th finger right here, this is where you're moving into lobbying territory when you're making the ask. When you say, can I count on your support on bill number 1204? Okay. If the center of your hand, you're looking at this personal story. So you're going to relate your personal story to every point of this. So I'll give you an example right now. Say I were going to speak to my legislator, say Senator Jim Rice, who's District 10. I would say, hi, Senator Rice. My name is Beechler. I live in Caldwell. I am one of your constituents. I'm here to talk to you about, and I would probably say if we're talking about Medicaid services, I would say I wanted to talk to you about the value of Medicaid services in my community. This is really important to me. For the last 12 years, I've been the clinical supervisor of developmental disabilities agencies, and I've seen the impact of services on the people that I serve, and I've seen the value. And this is an important issue in our state because everyone in our community deserves to, be a part of their community, access services so they can live the best lives that they can. And then I would say, would you support House Bill, I'm making this up, 1004, which would support Medicaid rate reimbursements? There, I just lobbied right there. But if you notice, if I stop, can I get your support on Medicaid service? Can you agree with me that Medicaid services are valuable to our community? That's where you're really advocating. So typically what I do with this information is how can I need this. So I got this a few years ago. Actually, I was helping with actually an ACLU training, and I was introduced to this helping hand. That's what I've dubbed it. But it can be used for anything. So it's a great format because you can use it to write letters to an editor if you're sending out a letter to the newspaper about an issue that you feel passionate about. You can use this. Should I stop talking? Hello? Everybody's on mute? Okay. So you can use this when you're crafting a script, when you're calling lawmakers. If you want to call and talk to a lawmaker and you're really nervous and you don't know what you're going to say, you can sit here and write this paragraph really quick. First finger name, I'm going to say, my name is Van, this is where I live. Okay, this is what I care about, this is why I'm calling, this is why you should care. Can I count on you for support? I know if you're ever on Facebook and they do those calls to actions, like call your congressperson, this is a little bit of the format that they use. You can do this when you're crafting emails. You can use this for your 3-minute testifying when you're testifying in committee. I also call this the 30-second elevator pitch. A lot of times if you're down at the State House, you may run into your legislator in the elevator, and you literally have 30 seconds to get your message out. So practice that. Put together a quick 2-sentence thing, and then your ask may be, can I follow up with a phone call or email? Can we meet when you have a free moment? Can we make a time to meet back when you're in Caldwell, not down here at the State House? And you do your quick 30-second elevator pitch. And you can use this for face-to-face meetings. You know, and what I like about the hand is you don't necessarily have to, you can practice. You don't necessarily have to have something written in front of you. If you remember, your son is introducing yourself. What is my issue? Why I care? And all of your fingers are there. You can use your own hand to talk about it. So we'll go back. That concludes my presentation. Is there any questions that came up? I think I stayed within the time frame. Yeah, we're about 37 minutes. We're good.
Van, I didn't see anybody enter a question in the chat box, but if you guys have a question, go ahead and turn your phone off mute, and you can ask Van yourself.
I'm open for questions. I testified once in front of the legislature, and I don't know if you've ever been to a committee like meeting, but a lot of times at the end they'll say, I'm open for questions. I actually did that in front of the legislature. I think it was the State Affairs Committee after I testified. I'm open for questions, and nobody had any. But I'd love to answer any if you have any. I heard nothing.
Well, we're not seeing any come in, Van, so I guess you answered everyone's questions through the whole thing, so that's wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant.
I would just encourage
Well,
you that go ahead.
Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions on the last thing here, I put a quick bio and my email address. If anyone wants to shoot me an email or anything like that, just let me know.
Perfect, thanks. And really, anybody can send things to our office as well if you come up with something, and we can get it on to you. So with that, I think we are good. We had lots of people comment that it was great information, and thank you very much. And we very much appreciate you spending the time to walk us through all this. Great links. I love that it's very specific, things that we can take away and use, and they'll come in handy. Haha, handy.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. You guys have a good day. Be safe.